Have you ever felt like your life was stuck in a downward spiral? That's exactly where Maya found herself. Drowning in debt, fresh off a bitter divorce, she was at her absolute wit's end. Life had thrown every possible curveball, and she was struggling to even stay afloat. Then, one ordinary, dreary morning, a letter arrived. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't the final notice. There was an official-looking envelope, thick and heavy, from a lawyer she'd never heard of. The letter spoke of a woman named Eleanor Voss and an inheritance, an estate called Stone Harbor. Maya had no idea who this Eleanor Voss was, but the word inheritance was like a lifeline in a stormy sea. With nothing left to lose and a flicker of desperate hope, she packed a small bag and set off. She had to find out what this was all about. Was this a mistake? Or was it the one chance she had to start over? Her journey led her to the rugged, untamed shores of Lake Superior. As she drove closer, a thick, persistent fog rolled in from the water. Swallowing the landscape and muffling the world in an eerie silence, the air grew cold, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something ancient. And then, emerging from the mist like a ghost, was Stone Harbor. The house wasn't just a house, it was a Gothic mansion, all sharp angles, dark stone, and shadowed windows that seemed to watch her approach. It stood on a cliff, a solitary sentinel against the gray, churning lake. It was both magnificent and deeply unsettling. As Maya stepped out of her car, the heavy front door creaked open. A woman stood silhouetted in the doorway. This was Doris, the housekeeper. She was older, with eyes that missed nothing and a mouth set in a permanent, thin line. Doris didn't offer a warm welcome. Instead, her first words to Maya were a cryptic warning. "This house remembers everything," she said, her voice raspy, "especially the things people try to forget." Her gaze was intense, analytical, as if she were trying to see right through Maya. Then she handed Maya a small, leather-bound book. "Mrs. Voss left this for you," Doris stated flatly. "It's the first one." "The first one?" Before Maya could ask what she meant, Doris turned and disappeared back into the shadows of the house, leaving Maya alone on the doorstep, the cold journal in her hand and 1,000 questions swirling in her mind. The air was thick with unspoken secrets, and Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lakeside fog. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors and rooms frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced through the grime-covered windows. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood, beeswax, and something else, a faint, almost floral scent that seemed out of place. The silence was absolute, broken only by the creak of floorboards under Maya's feet and the distant, mournful cry of a loon from the lake. It felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum. The lawyer finally arrived the next day, a small, nervous man who seemed just as intimidated by the house as Maya was. He laid out the terms of Eleanor Voss's will, and they were as strange and unsettling as the house itself. Maya was not the primary heir. The vast fortune and the estate were meant for Eleanor's grandchildren, Thomas and Claire. But there was a catch, a huge one. Thomas and Claire, who the lawyer described as openly hostile and resentful of their grandmother, would only inherit if a specific condition was met. Maya had to live in Stone Harbor alone for 60 consecutive days. If she left before the 60 days were up, for any reason, the entire estate, the house, the land, the fortune would be forfeit. And what would happen then? The lawyer looked grim per Mrs. Voss's explicit instructions, he said, the house, and everything in it will be burned to the ground. The thought was horrifying. Why would someone want their own home destroyed? And why was Maya, a complete stranger, the key to it all? She looked around at the grand, decaying rooms, at the portraits on the walls whose eyes seemed to follow her. She had a choice: walk away and return to her life of debt and despair, or stay in this creepy, isolated mansion for 2 months to secure a fortune to people who probably hated her for being there. The decision felt impossible, but her own circumstances made it for her. She had to stay. She had to see this through. That night, the full weight of her decision settled in. The house seemed to grow darker, the shadows longer and more menacing. The wind howled outside, rattling the old window panes like skeletal fingers. Unable to sleep, Maya remembered the journal Doris had given her. She found it on the nightstand, its leather cover worn smooth with age. A small, tarnished brass clasp held it shut. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The inside cover had a year elegantly written in faded ink, 1954. The handwriting was neat, precise, a woman's script from another era. This had to be Eleanor's. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she turned to the first page. She expected a diary entry about daily life, perhaps a note about the weather or a garden. But the words that leaped out at her from the page were anything but ordinary. It wasn't a diary entry. It was a confession. The first sentence hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Today, I buried the third one. Maya's blood ran cold. She read the line again, and then the lines that followed, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the book. The entry was short, chillingly matter-of-fact. Eleanor Voss wrote about 3 men. 3 men buried somewhere on the property of Stone Harbor. The journal didn't say who they were or why they were there. It only stated the fact, a dark secret hidden in plain sight for decades. Suddenly, the house wasn't just a creepy old mansion. It was a tomb. The creaks and groans of the old structure no longer sounded like a house settling. They sounded like whispers. The 60 days ahead of her no longer seemed like a simple, if lonely, task. They stretched out before her like a prison sentence, trapped in a house that held a dark and violent history. Maya was no longer just a caretaker. She was a witness. And as she sat there, alone in the suffocating silence of Stone Harbor, she realized the most terrifying truth of all. The house didn't just remember. It was waiting for its secrets to be uncovered. And she was the one who had to find them. What other horrors were hidden within the pages of Eleanor's journals? And what would happen when the house's other secrets started to surface? Thanks so much for watching. This story is just getting started, and the mysteries of Stone Harbor are deep and dark. If you're as hooked as I am and need to know what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what Maya uncovers. See you in the next video.